an effort to cover up what happened. Meaning, if you were telling the truth, you wouldn't have anything to cover up. With respect to some of the contacts that you've referred to between Russia and Trump campaign officials, are you aware of any of those U.S. persons who had contacts with Russia either making false statements about those contacts or failing to disclose those contacts?
I think that's something that we can pursue in closed session.
And Director, with respect to the contacts that you have seen, have you ever seen in your history working as an intelligence official this number of contacts between a foreign adversary and a presidential campaign?
I think our collection systems have increased over the years, and so I don't know whether or not it's a result of better collection or because there were more contacts this time than not. I just do not have a basis to make a determination about that.
Thank you. Yield back.
Jim is back. Dr. Wister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Brennan, for being here today and your candor in this conversation. Have you ever been asked to give your opinion to the FBI about whether intelligence you gathered should lead to an investigation? Do they engage you in that way? You said there's FBI engaged in the CIA, so I didn't know if they have an opinion or ask your opinion on that.
Well, we would make a referral to the Department of Justice in many instances when we saw classified information appear in the public in an unauthorized fashion. And so that referral is made to the Department of Justice to determine whether or not there should be a follow-up investigation. And it's the FBI that then takes a look at the circumstances and makes the decision. So that would be the referral we make.
Okay. And we've pretty much established that Russia and the Soviet Union, they've tried to meddle with our elections for years. Now, you came in as director after the last election. And which leads me to something Mr. Himes was talking about. He says, the rules of the Russian playbook or whatever, they try to build relationships, especially with influential Americans. And you would agree with that. That's one of the things that you're kind of looking out for, these relationships. At least I believe that's what you said. So I'm just trying to understand process here a little bit. What sets up a red flag? What type of conversation do you hear that says, maybe we need to take a little bit further look into this or refer it on? And I can't help but think back to the previous election when we see on videotape President Obama says, this is my last election. After my election, I have more flexibility. And President Medvedev, who he's speaking to, says, I understand. I'll transmit this information to Vladimir, and I stand with you. Now, you talk about the playbook. It sounds like I stand with you. That's a pretty strong relationship. This is certainly an influential American, and we're talking openly about elections. So, again, I'm not trying to launch another investigation here, but I am concerned about the process. So you weren't sitting as a director at that time, but, as Mr. Swalwell used the term, that's a pretty disturbing image, I think, to a lot of Americans, is what kind of relationship. So would you question this interaction where that type of conversation is taking place? And again, I'm just trying to understand process of how it moves from CIA to FBI to DOJ.
It was a direct conversation between the heads of government and state between two countries. I'm not going to respond to you.
Okay, but I think that's what we're I'm just, again, trying to get some understanding of what sets off a red flag. And when do you refer to law enforcement? I know you weren't the director at that time, but boy, that just hits all the things you were talking about in the playbook. Elections, influential American, and building a relationship. I stand by you. So just, again, trying to get to the substance there. But that's interesting. You can't respond to a personal conversation, but this is what we're talking about. Anyway, with that, I yield back.
I try to avoid getting involved in political issues, partisan issues, and so with respect to Mr. Winstrup, I just will not recognize that question.
Thank you. And with that, I yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Gowdy.